I guess I should put his microphone down. There we go. We're going to share music. Let's see, what are the chords? Because I can't see them from here. I'm sharing with my brother. Oh, I guess I can. Because, see, I'm sitting in the dark. See, so it's like, if we're going to be in the dark, because of that, I'm going to need. Yes. Thank you. I'll put that on the list. So, she says, "Hi, Deborah. I still haven't gone to Kaiser, and I'm hoping they're still open till 6. They might close by then, but I don't know why I'm just not got no spunk. I'm going to bring your plant next Saturday to Bible study after I go get my omeprazole. I will come home and relax." Okay. Yeah, I guess that's from Linda. She won't be here tonight. That's what she's saying.
Oh, one more second. So we're broadcasting, so let's get started. Broadcasting, recording, all that good stuff. Well, good evening and welcome to evening service. We have a small group. It's Mother's Day, of course. We have some flowers left for people to take home to Mom as a memorial of moms.
Or the mothers in their lives.
Yes. Yeah, it's getting just, we're starting to put, you're not going to see this if it's being broadcast, in that we're going to be projecting lyrics on the screen up here, but we'll have to sync it into the broadcast. And that's just another piece, but we'll get that there. Regarding announcements, I just want to let everybody know, Thomas gave a better, anyway, Pastor Richard is still in the hospital, and he's probably going to get out in another week or so.
No.
Another day or so, sorry. And he's going to rehab.
Either Monday or Tuesday.
Either Monday or Tuesday. And you said he's approved for 3 weeks? So that would be medical insurance, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the world works. You go to rehab. So he wants to be out in a week. He wants his computer and his books and wants to work this week. And I'm just like, oh, sure. So we'll see how that goes once he gets, I figure he'll probably want to do that once he gets to the nursing home or
Rehab center.
I know there's no such thing as a nursing home anymore. There's just rehab.
No, nursing homes are different.
They're for people who don't need to get better.
Okay, all right.
Rehab places will make you exercise and
Okay.
It's like they do things like physical rehab, and they try to fix things.
So in his world, he's preaching next week and he's working on his sermon, but this week. But we'll see that, when we see it.
Well, we'll talk about that later in the week.
Are there any other announcements? Not seeing any. Okay, yeah. Anyway, I just thought of something I need to set up, but we're not setting it up. Well, we're going to have a video tonight, and we could actually have the camera pointed at the video screen, but I haven't set that up yet. So maybe, actually, Don, don't worry about it. I'll come back and adjust it, or if you get it figured out, when we go to the video section, that's going to run about 20 minutes. And it's Gary Habermas on the first century proofs of the gospel. So, or the resurrection, excuse me, not the gospel, the resurrection. So anyway, and I'll talk about it more when we get closer to that. So not seeing any other announcements, let me open in prayer. Sunday evening to worship. We gather to praise you, and we gather to fellowship as a body of believers tied together by your Holy Spirit. We love you, Lord, and we want to be in your presence. So please come and be amongst us. Bless our praise, inhabit our praise, and build up our fellowship, that as a body of believers, as a part of Christ's body, that we come together with you. Oh Lord, we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
And now we'll go to our praise section.
Why don't you give Laura the remote?
You think you can figure out the remote? Operate a remote?
Point it at the laptop.
Or you get better results with cursor keys.
I will try, but I am very unproficient.
Right.
It's just, you know how to watch TV, right?
Use a computer
Well, yeah,
for,
with some, yeah,
with some,
specific things.
right.
But just that key right there. I'll try.
Okay. And then you can go back with the back.
With the back key.
And it appears that this screen is not well behaved, so you press hard.
Okay, excellent.
Because it may be.
If it wasn't on the Bible, it'd probably be better.
Yeah, but I've got to figure that out because the surface is too smooth.
Okay.
Huh? Well, he could do it. One of you could do it.
Because we've got to have somebody in the congregation.
And I'll try to sing.
Okay.
You want to give him the clicker? The clicker's right there underneath
No,
the key.
don't bother with the clicker. It's out. It's not behaving as well as I would like, so I need to go home. Well, it's really, it's not consistent. So I would say forward arrow, back arrow. Yeah, but it's not as consistent. Press and hold. Okay. Welcome to worship. Those who are able are encouraged to stand and sing praises to our Lord with us today.
We start in C, because that's the C chord, right?
The splendor of the King.
job done.
You're doing quite well. Test, test, test. Yes.
So our next one's here I am to worship.
Yep.
Is there something up there? Okay.
Light of the world, you step down into darkness. Open my eyes, let me see beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all days, oh so highly exalted, glorious in heaven above. Humbly you came to the earth you created, all full of sin became born. So here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. Light of the world, step down into darkness. Open my eyes, let me see.
Excuse me.
Huh?
Yeah, we have like a shorter list. Are you, so what we could have is have a page so that you basically just need to keep going forward instead of ever jumping back. We could do that. What's that? Okay.
Oh,
We'll work
yeah.
on that.
Well, I don't understand why on the projector, I normally have the slide on the right-hand side, or left side. It's a series of slides, and then it just previews the slide on that screen. So, yeah.
And so we just go,
And
here's
then
one,
have them
and
in
then
order
two,
so
and then
you
three,
can
and
watch them and go backwards and forwards. Yes, that's right. This is the
wait,
end.
hang on, don't rush. So it's like, we set our tempo, okay, and then we go.
Well, I've been playing for 2 minutes. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living By the way, before I go right on to the hymn, I just want to let you, those of you that are here, know that I talked, in talking with Sunset, I talked with Sunset and I talked with Zach. So we're talking with Kent and with
Mama
Kath.
Alaska. And, wait, okay.
Yeah, but what they were saying is that you remember the youth group that were here that did the setup? And they were really taken by our worship service in Sunday evening. Because, you know, they volunteered in a debrief. They said, well, it was just an eye-opener to us that we could worship in small groups, that you didn't have to be a big church to praise God, to worship. Yeah.
Amen.
And that they volunteered that. Now, of course, some of them are, you know, one of them's the guy who played the piano, that's the pastor, Steve's
The pastor's son. Yeah.
That's Steve's son. So it's that, which I'd never, he's been around a couple of years there. I'd never met him before. So, but being over Sunset, that's why it's good to kind of cross-pollinate with other churches and see what they're doing, because some people's worlds are totally different from mine, and that's even with people who consider themselves small churches, you know, with 150 people, you know, that they're a small church.
But then there's the small churches that have 60 people. It's like, okay. And then there's the tiny churches.
Which that's us.
Which, actually, I heard somebody else use that, so that's not your term.
Yeah.
Tiny church with a huge building.
Yeah. Okay,
Or
so
are we, or do we have,
We have
do we have
go to
words for the
hymns.
hymns up
So
there too?
the hymn comes next, which is the love of God, which is not 67.
Oh, is it here? Oh,
Yeah, we're gonna do this one.
let me see if this works. Oh, actually, I have to
They
hit
can
it.
have the words up there.
And it could be the speed of the computer or something like that. But anyway, where am I? introduction to people.
Why do you say it's not center?
Anyway,
Because, yeah, it's not level.
anyway. So Gary Habermas Dr. Gary Habermas is the head of the philosophy department at Liberty University in Virginia. So we got our two big Baptist universities, like universities on the coast. You got the Master in LA, and then you've got Liberty University, which was a big deal because I was can't remember his name. Anyway, he was a very big guy in the 80s. But the big thing is Liberty University is a very serious, high quality Baptist university, and they've just got lots of good programs. But he's been writing books, just tons and tons of books since the 80s on. A lot of it was for general consumption, but he's writing more scholarly books, and I've got some of his final work stuff that I work from. The big thing about him is if you go on YouTube, you can find all sorts of, if you start looking for Christian speeches presenting on various topics, there's so much you can find nowadays. It's like, remember when we used to have 16 millimeter videos, even before we lived off of DVDs? Huh? My movies.
16
Yeah,
millimeter.
Mr. Science, and how you had, you think about when we had, and we're going to do more video here now because we talked about Francis Schaeffer type stuff with How Shall We Then Live and Whatever Happened to the Human Race. And we were talking also about some more 80s type stuff. Well, this stuff continues to be produced, and the blessing is there's plenty of great Christian universities out there with great people doing great research, both in textual stuff, archaeology, and cosmology that help to build up the church to understand the world around them. And Christian apologetics is in a great place now because there's just the expansion of technology, and the educational community makes it so there's people out there who are working on solving a lot of problems. His thing, what we're going to be watching today is he's going to be talking about the proof of the resurrection, which is not the proof of the gospel, but other things he talks about is a physical archaeological proof, which is he's not the guy who invented the Shroud of Turin type stuff, but he's written on it, generally bringing it to the masses. Because there's like 3 degrees of scholarly writing that goes on out there. You've got stuff you can pick up at the bookstore, and it's not your area of expertise, and people can explain it to you. Then there's more detailed stuff you can build up for your pastor. And then there's the heavy-duty stuff, which is 1,000 pages and 500 pages of footnotes that explains all these details. Because the truth about a lot of things is you've got to look at the details to really, really both prove some things if you really had to and do more research. So he does that. He also writes on, as I say, the Shroud of Turin. He also writes on doubt in the Christian community, because he had to deal with certain things in his life, specifically the way he grew up, which at some point as an academic, he was overcome by doubt. He worked through that. Then his wife died in the 90s, and then just the grief. He also has written on grief from a Christian's perspective. And then I think he's got some other things, but he's good and he's clear, and he gets, and then his other thing is which this won't be on, but it's the basic 5 or 6 principles that prove the resurrection and the truth of the Bible, which is the fundamental things, and I would go back to him, leave it to him, about questions you have to answer uh, that prove things that everybody agrees on, both skeptics and believers. And he would be in the same realm as if anybody remembers if Lee Strabel sounds like which is the case for Christ, which I think about that just happening yesterday, but that's like 25 years ago. That's the year 2000. And what it is it's call it mass market, New York Times level dissemination of these arguments. So anyway, Gary Habermas preaching on the truth of the resurrection. And if you don't recognize the names of Roman historian, which he talks about, sorry. Let's see. I didn't plug it in, unfortunately.
Plug what in?
The computer. I wonder if I can turn it.
What?
Everybody's got good hearing here, right?
We'll sit up front. We'll be able to.
Yeah, come on up front, and we'll get the sound here. I could plug it in, but that would take me another 5 minutes anyway.
Next time we have a movie, we'll have popcorn.
Right.
I can hear that, Tim.
Yes, thank you, Dad. Appreciate you.
There's a little.
Huh?
Well, there is plenty of stuff like this out there that, he can curate for us. So that's cool, because we'll get exclusive stuff, right? Should I turn off the balcony too? Probably. It's probably one of those knobs, but it's probably one that says balcony.
Chest.
How do you know that's reliable and true? Here's the old method. This is not the minimal fact argument. The old method, which I think also works, and I'm careful it works. Here's the way a lot of Christians argue. Well, let's go to Mark. It's just 70 AD or plus 40. Plus 40.
Yeah, my hearing's not that great.
55 plus 55. And everybody puts John at about 95
Yeah, we're working out bugs tonight.
plus 65. And the argument is, in
So
spite
you
of
can
the
see
weight
it's
here,
not swelling up, can you?
these are reliably early texts in terms of distance.
Something early
They
facts
have
from a
major
distance.
sources from plus 40, plus 50, plus 55, and plus 60 to 65 at 90 to 95 AD. And this is
Okay.
great in the
I got that, 95 AD. I'm not sure what he's talking about, but he said plus 40, plus 50, plus 60, plus 95 AD. So he's pacing off the timeline.
Tim, what are you trying to do? Trying to hook the speaker or something?
He wants to be able to plug in the laptop possibly.
Yeah, because I didn't get prepared enough.
We could get the next meeting. Yeah, I'm not hearing it go through the mains.
It's not getting into me. Test, test. Okay.
So now we have a microphone that works.
All right. And we have about the same number of let's compare the Gospels to Tiberius a little bit. What's earliest? I'm just going to go to timeline the rest of my lecture. Let's call this ground zero. This is the death of Jesus. We're going to be working that way. This is ground zero. What year is it? Usually 30 AD, pretty popular. Second most popular date, 33. All right. If you ask the average person, say, Paul writes 1 Corinthians about here, 25 years away. How do you know that's reliable material in 1 Corinthians 15? Here's the old method. This is not the minimal facts argument. The old method, which I think also works, you have to be careful, but it works. Here's the way a lot of Christians would argue. Well, let's go to Mark, and I'll use critical dates, okay?
Can you guys hear that?
Dates. So, they'll say, you want to know what happened back there? Let's check Mark out at just 70 AD, so we're plus 40, right? Plus 40. Matthew, 80 AD, or plus 50. Luke, 85 AD, or plus 55. And everybody puts John
Right there.
at about
It's centered. So point it down.
95, or
Point it down there. Except you touched the screen.
Except for, no, I'm not touching, I'm getting, oh,
No, you touched.
oh, so I need to make it play. No, that didn't.
No,
do it.
you muted the camera.
Oh, muted the camera.
Okay, so.
plus 65. And the argument is, you know, in spite of what you might hear, these are reliably early texts in terms of distance.
We're hearing the fan in the
They have
background.
major sources from plus 40, plus 50, plus 55, and plus 60 to 65 at 90 to 95 AD. And this is great in the ancient world. So really? I don't do ancient history, I don't know, but is that really good? Because you hear a lot of skeptics say, well, it's way too late afterwards. Okay, let's do some comparisons. This guy's an atheist. He says, Christians are going to want to tell you that 40 to 60 years later is plenty close. I want to tell you it's not. That's really, really late. I said, do we know a lot about Alexander the Great? I said, yeah. We know a lot about Alexander the Great. Here's Alexander's death, about 330 BC. By the way, he was a private tutor. He was privately tutored by Aristotle. So, about 330 BC.
Can you understand
Our
him?
earliest source for Alexander on this timeline, our earliest source for Alexander.
So this is the only chord I found.
Now, I told Art I wouldn't go off the platform here. I have to go out that extra door. Earliest source for Alexander, plus 300. Oh yeah. Yeah, we knew a lot of Alexander 300 years later. Well, they had earlier sources. That's a well, so the gospel writers,
Sorry.
the best sources for Alexander. Plutarch and Arians. They wrote 425 to 450 after Alexander died. That's not. All right, pick a different example. He's an odd one, so we don't have good historical sources.
We're gonna figure this out.
All right, how about Tiberius Caesar? He was on the throne in Rome when Jesus died. Tiberius lives.
Okay, so,
Died just a few years after Jesus does.
We just need a particular plug.
so what we need is a USB to,
No, we don't need USB. We need a 1/8 inch hi-fi stereo jack, like a headphone jack that plugs, an adapter that adapts it to XLR or portage. There's some stuff around here I just didn't set up.
It's probably in a bin in the fireside room, right?
Yeah, but it was right here. I used it last week.
Oh. Oh.
Let's just sing the hymn and say So Tim?
Yeah.
Oh, no, this is a PowerPoint.
Well,
Might
yeah.
want to put that music stand down there, the bulletin board, you might check to make sure it's not underneath
Oh,
that.
here's that.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, turn it down.
I don't know how. Volume is where?
Okay, hold on. Turn this down.
Sorry about that. Are you awake now? Everybody's awake now. I'm plugged in. Okay.
I think 37 AD. So he's on the throne. Certain early writers link Jesus to Pilate and Tiberius. All right, and we have about the same. I'm going to start doing a timeline for the rest of my lecture. Let's call this ground zero. Okay? This is the death of Jesus. We're going to be working that way. This is ground zero. What year is it? Usually 30 AD, pretty popular. Second most popular date, 33. All right. Now, if you ask the average person, you say, Paul writes 1 Corinthians about here, 25 years away. How do you know that's reliable material in 1 Corinthians 15? Here's the old method. This is not the minimal facts argument. The old method, which I think also works, you have to be careful, but it works. Here's the way a lot of Christians would argue. Well, let's go to Mark, and I'll use critical dates, okay? I'll use critically ascertained dates. So they'll say, you want to know what happened back there? Let's check Mark out at just 70 AD, so we're plus 40, right? Plus 40. Matthew, 80 AD, or plus 50. Luke, 85 AD, or plus 55. And everybody puts John at about 95, or plus 65. And the argument is, in spite of what you might hear, these are reliably early texts in terms of distance. They have major sources from plus 40, plus 50, plus 55, and plus 60 to 65 at 90 to 95 AD. And this is great in the ancient world. You go, really? I don't do ancient history, I don't know, but is that really good? Because you're a lot of skeptics say, well, that's way too late afterwards. Okay, let's do some comparisons. This guy's an atheist. He says, Christians are going to want to tell you that 40 to 60 years later is plenty close. I want to tell you it's not. That's really, really late. I said, do we know a lot about Alexander the Great? He said, yeah, we know a lot about Alexander the Great. Here's Alexander's death, about 330 BC. By the way, he was a private tutor. He was privately tutored by Aristotle. So, about 330 BC, our earliest source for Alexander on this timeline, our earliest source for Alexander. Now, I told Art I wouldn't go off the platform here. I have to go out that exit door. Earliest source for Alexander, plus 300. Oh yeah, yeah, we knew a lot about Alexander 300 years later. Well, they had earlier sources. That's what the argument is. Well, so did the gospel writers. Best sources for Alexander, Plutarch and Arrian. They wrote 425 to 450 after Alexander died. Well, that's not. All right, pick a different example. He's an odd one, so we don't have good historical sources. All right, how about Tiberius Caesar? He was on the throne in Rome when Jesus died. Tiberius lives, he dies just a few years after Jesus does. I think 37 AD. So he's on the throne. Certain early writers link Jesus to Pilate and Tiberius. All right, and we have about the same number of major sources for Tiberius that we do for Jesus. Okay? Good comparison. Let's compare the Gospels to Tiberius real fast. What's our earliest source for Tiberius? Contemporary. And we have it. Ooh. You think to yourself, I'm not going to say anything, but the New Testament's not looking so good here because we don't have a contemporary argument, a contemporary source. There is an early source for Tiberius, a general, a Roman general, but it's the least usable of the four sources. It's the least valuable of the four sources. The next best source for Tiberius, next best source. I mean, the next source, period. It's the best one. Next source, out there. Tacitus at plus 80. 15 years later than John. Next best source, Suetonius, Roman historian, plus 85. And the fourth source for Tiberius, Dio Cassius, plus 180. Yeah, but skeptics say, yeah, but you can't compare Gospels, prejudiced religious writings, to Greco-Roman histories. Really? That's something else that's changed in recent scholarship. About 1990, a prominent classical scholar at the University of London wrote a book comparing the Gospels to Greco-Roman biographies, or bio, as it's sometimes pronounced. And he argued the Gospels have all the earmarks of Greco-Roman biographies, and they should be considered biographies. It's, maybe you can think in your own fields about how a major work has changed thought, and that has held the day since 1990. And today, most New Testament scholars, critical New Testament scholars, believe that the Gospels are Greco-Roman biographies. So they are the same genre. Well, then you go, yeah, but they got miracles in them. So do all the Greco-Roman historians. Oh, you're kidding. No, they do. Virtually every Greco-Roman writer. Now, Thucydides is an exception. He says he doesn't believe in that stuff and he doesn't do it. But I mean, Herodotus, the so-called father of history. Tacitus, although he has fewer than Suetonius. Suetonius has a lot. Pretty normal. You go, well, then they're all whatever. Okay, really? They're all junk because they report miracles, right? We were talking back there before this started, and let me refer to you a 2-volume work that's just come out a year ago. It's called Miracles. It's by Craig Keener, PhD from Duke, New Testament, minor in classics. So he's a Greco-Roman scholar. And he's done a 2-volume work, 1,200 pages, part 1 and part 2, on contemporary miracle claims. He's got pre and post CAT scans, pre and post MRIs, pre and post X-rays. And some of these things, when you read them, you're going to say, how come I've never heard this? I don't know. But you can't put these things down. These 2 books are just incredible. He's got hundreds of cases from all over the world. He's got so many of them that the table of contents reads like this. Cases in Asia, cases in Central America, cases in South America, cases in Western Europe, cases in North America. That's how they're arranged. And then under each section, he's got little things like those with corroboration, those with heavy evidence. And his main argument in 2 volumes is this: don't call the New Testament naive because it records miracles. And don't call Greco-Roman writers, which is his second area, don't call Greco-Roman writers naive because they record miracles. Everybody in the world knows about these things except the Western university community, and they're coming around. That's his claim. So that does not make these guys naive. Because if you're going to call John naive, you call Herodotus naive. If you call Mark naive, you call Tacitus naive. What makes Bart Ehrman say that we can get Paul's report from just plus 25? What makes Bart Ehrman say that we've got plenty of material from 1 to 2 years after the cross? How in the world can a guy who is, quote, an agnostic leaning toward atheism, how can he say we can get this material back to plus 1 or plus 2? All right, again, let's do the math. Here's the cross. When does Paul come to the Lord? Plus 2. You say, well, I think it's plus 3. Great, plus 3. 3 years later, he goes up to Jerusalem. 3 plus 3, 6, 30 AD. Oh, I think he was converted 32 AD. Okay, great. 2 plus 3, 35. And in Galatians chapter 1, Paul says, I went up to Jerusalem after 3 years, so we're plus 5 or plus 6 after the cross. And Paul says, I spent 15 days with Peter, the head apostle. He said, I saw no other apostles, except James, the brother of Jesus. I spent 15 days with Peter and James, the brother of Jesus. Now, what were they discussing during that time? Well, the theme of the short book called Galatians is the nature of the gospel. It's, I guess maybe we could say this is the theme of Galatians. Here's the gospel. Get it right. Don't change it. If you change it, you're anathema. Preach the right thing. Don't try to get there some other way. It's by grace through faith. All right, you got it? Don't mess up the gospel. That's the bottom line. So when he goes to Jerusalem at plus 5 or plus 6, if they weren't talking about the gospel centrally, at least had to come up. Now, you know, as a guy who studied the resurrection all my life, and I tell people the resurrection rescued me from 10 years of skepticism. I told my mother from back in those days that I was this close to becoming a Buddhist. I really was. And in fact, some days I think I was, like we were talking about in the car, you know, what side of the fence am I on? I don't know. You know, you're in grad school and you're going through this stuff, and A lot of things are going on. And the resurrection kind of rescued me from this. I could see that this argument wins the day. Seriously. All right, so what's going on here? I know what I would ask Peter and James first. This would be my first question to them if I'm the Apostle Paul. I'll tell you what I saw on the way to Damascus if you tell me what you saw a few days after the crucifixion. How did he look? Come on, guys. Give it to me. What did you guys see? Then I'll tell you what I saw. And then I might say this if I'm Paul, depending on how bold Paul is. And, Paul was pretty bold from his epistles. I might have said this. Hey, guys, the three of us have something in common here. I'm not trying to dog you guys, but, we all have a point in our life when we weren't exactly exemplary followers of the Lord. I was on my way to kill or imprison men, women, and children who named the name of Christ. I'm not proud of that. James, you grew up in the house with the Messiah, and you were an unbeliever. Somebody told me you used to think your brother was insane. That's what Mark 3 says. That his family thought he was beside himself. And James might have hung his head and say, I didn't know any better. Peter, you have an exalted position as the head apostle. I'm not trying to dog you, but you denied your Lord 3 times. Now, if I'm writing a book here, I'm going to put an informational footnote. I'm going to say a pastoral note. I'm going to say, look what God does with people who've made a lot of mistakes, and he uses them later. That's history side. And Paul says, I went back here at +5 or 6 because I wanted to investigate. Then, as we go from the end of Galatians 1 to Galatians 2, no chapter break, he says, 14 years later, I went back. All right. 14 years later, I went back. Critics, Bart Ehrman, Helmut Kirster at Harvard, they put this event at about 48 AD. We're still only +18. He went back, and Galatians 2:2 is one of the most incredible verses in the New Testament. I love the way the King James translates it here, but most translations say just about the same thing. Paul says in Galatians 2:2, I went back up after 14 years to see the other apostles and to set before them the gospel I was preaching, to see if I was running or had run in vain. What? Yeah, I went back up to Jerusalem to make sure we were all on the same page, to make sure we were all presenting the same gospel. Neat. So we do want to make sure that you guys were preaching the same thing. Galatians 2:2, I went back up there. I shared with them the gospel I was preaching. And then just a few verses later, Galatians 2:6, these 5 words in English, they added nothing to me. They added nothing to me. Then just 3 verses later, this is where we get the phrase, they laid hands on Barnabas and me, and they gave us the right hand of fellowship. And they said, y'all go to the Gentiles and take this message. We're going to stay here and give the message to the Jews. But the point is, the message was the same. They added nothing to me. You take it to them, we'll give it here, and that's what we decide to do. Paul says it this way in 1 Corinthians 15:11, reflecting on this is them telling Paul that he was okay. Here's Paul telling them that they're okay. 1 Corinthians 15:11, he just gives a list of the appearances, and then he says this, whether it is I or they, who are they? They are the other apostles, he says so in the context. Whether it is I or they, this is what we preach and this is what you believe. Paul's saying, hey, you don't like me? Great, go talk to Peter. Don't like Peter? Go talk to James. Because you're going to get the same message no matter who you talk to. Whether it's I or they, so we teach, and so you believe. Next few verses, that's why Paul says 3 times If we're wrong about this, we're liars. If we're wrong about this, we're preaching in vain. The we're is he and the other apostles. Why? Because they were preaching the same message. Now, if Peter and James gave it to Paul, they had it before he had it. Now, when I say an early creed, one of the reasons they know it's an early creed is because in the Greek, it reads stylistically. 1 Corinthians 15:3 and following reads like this in the Greek. Da 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 da. Two stanzas with data, and not a rhyming sequence like American, like English, but with a way that's easily memorizable. Why? Because most New Testament scholars today believe that the vast majority of Jesus' audiences, contrary to other things you may have heard, the vast majority of Jesus' audiences were illiterate, up to 90%. What do you do when you teach somebody who's illiterate, but you want them to teach somebody else? What do? You tell stories that they'll remember. Parables. And you give them short, pithy statements that they will memorize. Turn the other cheek, walk the extra mile, do unto others, that they will memorize. And when you codify things into a da 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 da, especially if there's an Aramaic original, which is the language Jesus speaks, now we know you're really going back in the church because somebody had to put this together. All right, Paul hears it. They had it before Paul. Someone had to codify it. You had to get it from the events to the da 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 da, and we're right on top of it. In fact, some of the leading scholars today have said the following. Larry Hurtado, just recently retired, head of the religion department at Edinburgh University. Hurtado says, coming out of the gates in 30 AD, Hurtado says two doctrines had to be present or there would be no Christianity. What are those two doctrines? Deity of Christ and a resurrection. Of course, if there's a resurrection, there's a death. So, deity, death, resurrection. That's the gospel. Whenever you hear the gospel defined in the New Testament, writings of Paul or in the book of Acts, that's the minimal gospel presentation. Deity, death, resurrection, and then the question of, do you have faith? And that's what Paul's saying in 1 Corinthians 15, 1 and 2. What did you do with that message? Did you believe? First two verses, 1 Corinthians 15, 1 and 2. So deity, death, resurrection, belief. And Hurtado says, coming out of the gate, you got that. From Edinburgh. Okay. Richard Bauckham, Cambridge. Same thing. I gave this lecture one time at Cambridge. Same lecture. And Richard Bauckham, who's a very prominent scholar, slipped in and was sitting in the back row while I was speaking. And I went ahead and gave him a regular lecture, which took his name in vain several times, and said, Richard Bauckham says you can date it there. He sat in the back. I asked him later, do you have any comments? He said, no, that's what I teach. That is present from 30 to 31 AD. Okay, third guy, James D.G. Dunn, as influential as any historical Jesus scholar today. Dunn says the latest this da 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 form could have been memorized. The latest it would have been put from event into form is 6 months after the cross. That's James D.G. Dunn. Here's the cross. 6 months later, this is in da 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 form. And like I said, the very latest is Bart Ehrman. I started the lecture with it. Bart Ehrman saying we can get this back to, he has other arguments. Bart Ehrman does. Now, to bring this full circle, make a comment or two and I'll be done. What about my professor who said, yeah, go ahead and do the resurrection, but don't say it happened because the New Testament said it happened. And I said, critical scholars use the New Testament, but they use it critically. They don't assume it's inspired or even reliable. They use it critically. How would Bart Ehrman, how would Bart, qua Bart, get that conclusion? of 1 to 2 years later. Well, one of the things he does in this book, Did Jesus Exist? He asks, how many independent arguments do we have for the crucifixion of Jesus? Now, the Jesus Seminar, a very critical, very quote-unquote liberal group, says if you have 2 sources for something, that makes the proclamation a lot greater chance of being historical, because 2 heads are better than 1. 2 sources are great. Bart Ehrman asked the question, how many sources do we have for the crucifixion? He gives a list. He cites, to his skeptical mind, the way he does this, he gives 11 sources, 11 independent sources for the crucifixion of Jesus. 11. Now, on ancient historical grounds, why isn't 11 exemplary? When, as Paul Myers says, professor of ancient history, Western Michigan University, Myers says many things in the ancient world depend on 1 witness, and 2 make an event unimpeachable. 2. Bart Ehrman says we have 11 different sources, historical sources for the crucifixion of Jesus. So here's what you get, bottom line. This phrase will have virtually no disputants in the contemporary world. Jesus' earliest followers had experiences that they thought were appearances of the risen Jesus. Virtually nobody disputes that. Bart Ehrman says, no, I don't dispute that. It's determined historically. We know it's true. Why would I say I dispute it? It's just true. So here's what you do. We have that sentence. The earliest followers of Jesus had experiences that they believe were appearances of Jesus. And what do you do if you're a skeptic? You come up with alternatives. Well, maybe they were lying. Well, maybe they saw hallucinations. But the same data, which I've been given here, the same data which scholars share, say those other theories don't work. And so now you're left with an appearance. And therefore, a lot of skeptics, place we began, a lot of people today who are happy and are often quoted by the skeptical community will say, I'm a skeptic, as Dale Allison does. He was the one I was citing earlier. Dale Allison, who says, I'm a skeptic. He calls himself a cryptic deist. And then he says, but I'm sure the risen Jesus appeared to his disciples after his death. I can give you others, but is that the definition? Ed Sanders, E.P. Sanders, Duke University, recently retired from Duke, historian. He gives a list of well-accepted historical events, and he calls himself a liberal. And then he says this in his list of accepted historical facts. He says, the following is an historical fact. The earliest disciples saw the risen Jesus. I don't know how exactly they saw him, but they saw him. That's his list, and that's part of his list. That's one of his facts in his irreducible minimum list. The earliest disciples saw the risen Jesus. How do we get that? Because we have the data that can track it back to the beginning.
And we'll make this tighter in the future when we have the video set up and be more technically together. So let's go ahead and depart with prayer. Oh, I just want to let you know that, offering plate, still there. Everything people can do to help, great thing. Lord, thank you for Gary's presentation, and hopefully some of the things, a lot of names bouncing around. If you're not, don't. I'm sure some people are better at knowing who's on the baseball team than who the Roman historians were of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th centuries. But it's important for us. It helps our faith to explain to others that we want to be saved, to hear about Jesus Christ, that he's real and he is God, and he came, he saw deity, death, and resurrection. He's the Son of God. He came, he died, and rose again, and sits on the right hand of God the Father Almighty. And he loves us like we love each other. So Lord, bless this our fellowship. Bless what we were nurtured by this time together, and may as we take it in the coming week, being held up by your Spirit, and that we bring the good news of Jesus Christ to everyone we come in contact with, ready to pray for people and